We start tonight with another twist in the Ukraine story, the entry of Saudi Arabia. You heard it right. Saudi Arabia wants to play mediator and they sent their foreign minister to Kiev. Now, on first impressions, it doesn't add up. Why is Saudi Arabia interested in Ukraine? What is their minister doing in Kiev? His name is Prince Faisal bin Farhan. He made a surprise visit to Ukraine and he came bearing gifts. Gifts worth $410 million. So it's clear that Saudi Arabia is making an outreach to Ukraine. The question is why? Tonight on Vantage, we'll connect the dots to find the answer. You see, Saudi Arabia has a unique position in this conflict. It has cooperated with Russia and it has shown support for Ukraine too. Now it wants a bigger role. But can Riyadh deliver where others failed? Every leader worth their salt has tried mediation in this battle. Major powers remain at odds on how to end the war. Ukraine and Russia refuse to come to the negotiating table. So what role can Riyadh play? Let's break this down and start with the visit. It was a surprise visit, just like Joe Biden's. It came out of the blue. This was the first time in 30 years that a senior Saudi leader has visited Ukraine. The foreign minister held a series of meetings. He met with President Volodymyr Zelensky. He also met Zelensky's chief of staff and Ukraine's foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba. They signed a range of agreements. Riyadh is giving aid worth $410 million to Ukraine. And the agreements dictate how this money will be spent, $410 million. A big chunk of this money will go towards oil grants. Basically, Saudi Arabia is financing oil products for Ukraine. Some $300 million will be spent towards this, to give oil products to Ukraine. Ukraine will be able to get oil from Saudi Arabia for free, up to $300 million. The Saudi foreign minister also had a message. He called for a peaceful end to the war.
The kingdom is also really eager to support everything that reduces tension and escalation in order to get to a peaceful solution to this war. And we in Saudi Arabia are convinced that any end to the war should be through discussions on a negotiation table in a framework of international law and through Charter of the United Nations to respect the sovereignty of the countries. This is why we will keep working with different parties to search for a chance of getting to such a settlement.
A negotiated truce and respect for the UN Charter, he says. Riyadh wants this war to end. Last week, the United Nations General Assembly voted on a resolution. It called on Russia to withdraw from Ukraine. Do you know which way Saudi Arabia voted? Riyadh backed the resolution. In other words, Saudi Arabia supported the call for Russia to leave Ukraine. And it explained its position in a press statement. I have it with me. Listen to what it says. Listen to what the last line says. The kingdom will continue to strive to mediate between the two parties in an effort to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict that will put an end to the ongoing bloodshed and suffering. So Saudi Arabia wants to mediate, but will others play ball? Also, why does Riyadh think it can succeed where others have failed? Because Riyadh has done it in the past and they were successful. This was in the month of September. Saudi Arabia was involved in a negotiation. It was a prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine. And Saudi Arabia was the mediator. And it succeeded. Almost 300 prisoners of war were released. This included 10 foreign nationals, the citizens of Morocco, the United States, the United Kingdom, Sweden, and Croatia, among others. Yesterday, Ukrainian officials underlined the role of Saudi Arabia.
I would also like to emphasize the active role of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in the mediation and negotiations on the humanitarian and social track. We are very grateful to Saudi Arabia for its assistance in the release of 10 foreign prisoners of war on September 21 last year. This mission of Saudi Arabia is an extremely important factor in our cooperation, and we agreed that we will continue to work in this direction.
Saudi Arabia is important. That is the takeaway from Kiev. What about Moscow? Where does Russia stand on potential Saudi mediation? Saudi Arabia and Russia have a strong relationship. The Saudis have helped Moscow. They haven't joined the Western sanctions against Russia. They've also refused to ban Russian oil supplies. Remember, Russia is a part of the oil cartel called OPEC+, OPEC, OPEC. It's the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC Plus is a group of 23 countries. They are the world's leading oil producers. They hold regular meetings. They decide how much oil they should sell, and hence they also dictate global oil prices. Last year, the West put a lot of pressure on Saudi Arabia. It wanted Russia to be removed from this group, OPEC+. But Saudi Arabia refused. In fact, Biden traveled all the way to Riyadh for this and returned empty-handed. So the Saudis have stood by Russia, and this relationship with both Russia and Ukraine makes the Saudis potential mediators. Saudi Arabia has influence and leverage, and it has a successful track record of mediation. So Riyadh's efforts must be taken seriously. It's another matter that Riyadh itself remains bogged in a war, the one in Yemen. The United Nations has appealed for $4.3 billion for the people of Yemen. It's often called the forgotten war. But for now, the Saudis want to put all their energies on ending the war in Ukraine. But what's in it for them? Why should Riyadh bother itself with this? Succeeding where world powers have failed would raise Riyadh's stature. From being declared a pariah a few years ago to making headlines as a potential peace broker is a lot of progress for Riyadh. And it doesn't hurt that the Americans have praised the visit. Saudi Arabia has a lot to gain in this game, and it's playing its cards well so far.